Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're going to be doing another episode of our Jurassic World Evolution 2 mod spotlights, where we take a look at some of the wonderful mods we've been making and compare them to their real-life fossil counterparts. And today, there's not going to be a lot of new species. This is a big pack that Feilong has done, where he goes through and kind of remakes a lot of the animals to be more paleo accurate, or more accurate to the real specimens that we have of these animals. So this is going to be less going through like the information of the animal, we're just going to go through the anatomy. So this is going to be kind of a lightning round, so hopefully this will be a bit shorter than most, but we'd have 10 animals to cover. This is about all the ornithopods in Jurassic World Evolution 2, something like things like Dryosaurus and some of the later hadrosaurs and iguanodons and things like that. So we're going to go through them in alphabetical order, and I really hope you guys enjoy. We're not going to go too much in detail, as I mentioned. We're just going to talk about some of their anatomy and things like that and see what has changed. So very excited to talk about that. So yeah, let's get started with C. So we're going alphabetical order, as I mentioned. So C for Corythosaurus. So I'm going to let them walk out. I want to get a good paused, good example. Let's see if we can find one that's kind of standing there. We'll use you. This one here, because he looks kind of like the JP1. So let's just wait for him to get... There we are. So let's have a look at our first person view. I'm so glad we got this first person view. So now let's have a look at this wonderful guy. So let's just hide the UI. So this is Corythosaurus, of course. Very wonderful design in the third movie, but I really like the changes that they've been made here for paleo accuracy's sake. We can see they've generally been quite bulked up because often shrink wrapping is a thing that happened a lot, and even today it still happens a lot where people kind of really underestimate the amount of muscle and fats and sinew that's on these wonderful extinct animals. So if we look at Corythosaurus and compare it, we can see some of the major changes, especially around the head. We can see that the head's kind of a little bit more taller, with that crest being more expanded and tall. It's like a lambeosaurian, so it's got kind of that crest. Really, really cool. We can see also the neck. There's been some recent studies on the necks of especially Parasaurolophus, as we'll get to soon, and it shows that they had necks and ligaments around the neck. They're actually quite similar and quite convergent to like modern day cattle and things like that. So it seems they had quite muscular and beefy necks as well. And we can see a thing for in particular with Corythosaurus itself is that it's got this really, really high back, as you can see here. So it comes up right there like that. Looks really, really wonderful. Go boom, and then going along down the body here. The tail looks right here. We can see the because one weird thing about these guys is that even though they're called bird hip dinosaurs, not related to birds at all. So that's kind of a little thing of convergence. So what happened in the bird hips is that the two bones at the bottom of the pelvis are kind of joined up and kind of came out here. So you can see that there. Like it's the ischium and the pubis. I believe that's right. Terminology is not the strongest suit, but yeah, really, really nice. Really, the only thing I can notice is the feet, as I keep going on about. A lot of these hadrosaurs seem to have had like a hoof-like structure, so there would have been 2 nails and like that, even 3 nails potentially in these later guys, but it seems like we know that from specimens of Edmontosaurus, so it's kind of like a convergent hoof. So you can see a lot of the similarities between the extinct hadrosaurs and the modern cows and things like that. So that's really, really awesome. So yeah, really cool to see Corythosaurus. We'll have a quick look at the other guys. This really shows off that neck there. You can see, we'll have a look from here. You can see the high back and the thick neck it's got there. Obviously, there has to be some concessions because of the rig, and they most likely would be walking on all fours most of the time, but really, really wonderful addition there. You can really see that changes there that really make them look like the real animal. So that's our Corythosaurus. We'll let them walk out of the way of the hatchery there. So next we're going from Corythosaurus, we're going to go to D, so that's Dryosaurus. So we're going to talk about this guy. Remember, these are all done by Feilong, and I'll link it all in the description, things like that. So just make sure you remember that. So let's see if we can get one standing in the sun. I want to see one standing in the sun just perfectly. How about you? You'll be my test dummy. This one here, perfect. So let's have a look at you. So Dryosaurus is a lot bigger than a lot of people give it credit for, as you can see here. It's almost like the size of a horse. Very, very big animals. And in fact, in real life, we actually have no idea how big they got because we don't have any adult specimens. But the specimens that we do have are like 2 to 3 meters long, so very, very big animals, as you can see here. Maybe potentially even 4 meters. Very, very big animals. And since we have younger specimens, we don't really know what the adult form looks like, but we have like near adults or subadults, so we have a better idea than kind of let on. We can see some of the changes here. We've got a bit smaller heads. Kind of comes with being a subadult. The heads kind of get smaller as they get older, so it's potentially could be even smaller in adult. Very lithe and thin build. You can see the ischium pubis pushed out here, and legs being thinned up a little bit. Tail, I think, has been elongated a little bit as well. Really fits that look. Got that arched back. Really looking like a real-life Dryosaurus, and they've got their 5-fingered hand there, which is like a Dryosaurus, and the wonderful beak. So this one is actually pretty spot on. So really awesome to see. Even the original game, it was stylized quite a bit in the original model, but it's just really nice to see them get a little bit of an accuracy model. But obviously, as I mentioned, we don't have any fully adult specimens, so we don't really know what the adult looks like, but we can get a pretty good idea from this. So I'm a big fan of this one, especially that head there. It really fits the Dryosaurus because they've got this like kind of longer head and things like that. Eyes could probably be a little big, but obviously you can't change some things. The ischium and the bird hips is kind of there. Really, really wonderful. I'm a big fan. This really just shows you how big they are. It's like 2 meters tall and probably like 4 long or something. Really, really big animals. It really shows that sometimes our perspective is really off about these guys. Yeah, huge animals. So yeah, that's our Dryosaurus. So next we've got everyone's favorite big E. We've got Edmontosaurus. So it seems like these guys are kind of. I imagine that they look like they're based on E. regalis, as we'll get into. So let's have a look at this one here. We'll pause one in the sun. Where's one that we can pause in the sun? There we are. We'll pause it for you. There we are. Oh no. We'll pause for you, buddy. So let's have a look at you, you wonderful big guy. Look how just huge these guys are. Wonderful. So this is obviously Edmontosaurus. I believe these guys are Irregalis. I could be wrong on that, but it kind of looks like Irregalis. So the skull kind of looks more a Nectens, because a Nectens has a quite long skull, but there's not too much difference between them. But really, really wonderful. The comb on that head there is actually evidence from with soft tissue from Regalis. So we're going to assume this is Regalis because it kind of seems like it with that crest on its head there. It's a fleshy crest, so unlike a lot of other hadrosaurs that had these big bony crests that preserve obviously in the fossil record, these guys had a really soft crest, so that was literally all tissue. And without some of the particularly well preserved specimens that we have with skin impressions and things like that, we really wouldn't have known that they had that comb there. So that's really interesting. That shows like convergence. And other things from Edmontosaurus is that we know about, especially we'll go with Regalis. Regalis seem to have a bunch of like large feature scales or even like clumps of scales going down their neck, almost like a patchwork, like armor going down their neck there. And yeah, we have lots of different, it seems like they had bigger scales kind of on the body and then find out as they got to the bottom there. Same with the limbs. So kind of looks nice on here, but it's obviously not accurate to the animal. It's really hard to show a picture here, but still really, really wonderful. Other than the scales and the feet as well, as I mentioned. We know from Edmontosaurus that they had these two little hoof things that kind of came out there. So it was kind of one toe, the other toe. And it really looked similar to the hooves on cow or something like that. So very, very weird and wacky. So it shows how much we can learn about these animals just from some well-preserved specimens, especially since Edmontosaurus is so well known. But yeah, this is a really good E. regalis. I think I'm going to assume it's E. regalis, but it looks really perfect for E. regalis, and big fan. Other than the scales and the feet, big fan. Feilong really has done a wonderful job, like editing these a little bit. Really, really awesome. So yeah, that's our Edmontosaurus done. So let's let them walk out and do their own thing. So let's move away from here. So I told you, lightning round. We get through these quite fast. So next, we've got everyone's favorite big bad bruiser. Hopefully you don't go too close. I want you to get out of there. Come on. Go and hang out over there. You don't want you... You're just taking your time. Run off. Run off, will you? There we are. Good on you. So let's just wait a little bit there. Go herd with your friends. So now we've got everyone's favorite big spiky boy. One of the first dinosaurs. Iguanodon. Well, not one of the first dinosaurs ever, but one of the first dinosaurs discovered. So look at these wonderful guys. Let's see, where are you guys in the light? We'll have a look at you when you move. There we are. We'll have a look at you, Mr. Brown one. Look how big these guys are. Probably a little bit big, because some of the animals in the game are a bit oversized, but still, they would have been very large animals. I believe like about like 10 to 11 meters long, so still quite big. And look how just cool they look. Iguanodon has really gone through a lot of transformations, and we've gotten a pretty good idea of what it looks like now from lots of really, really good specimens. But we can see at the face here that's been changed quite a bit. They've almost got like this long and big beak, and they just look so funny looking, really, really big and powerful. It comes like a downturn, but there are lots and lots of teeth in their jaws that they use to chew. So they chew quite similar to like how mammals did. It's another reason why they're kind of similar to mammals. And so, but not side to side, mainly up and down. We also got these really long, thick neck here, and these really, really large forelimbs that Iguanodon is known from having. And they also have this little thumb here, which I believe wouldn't have a claw there, because only digits 4 to 5 would have things. And then similar to Edmontosaurus there, this is kind of because Iguanodon is kind of their early relative, so this is kind of the evolving condition. So it's likely that they would have kind of had those first two here, the second and third digit there, the one apart from the thumb. These two here would have had these nails similar to Edmontosaurus and animals like that, but these two here would have been kind of conjoined in that kind of flesh. Even all of them would be combined into flesh, so they wouldn't be separate digits that you could find. It would be all digits in kind of one big toe, and then you have your pinky and your thumb. So it's a little bit shrink wrapped, you could say, but looks really, really wonderful. Big butty arms, as I mentioned. Really big issue in there. They had a really big gut, which was filled with intestines and space to digest all the plants they were eating, especially with bacteria that help digest things like cellulose and things like that. And also this kind of long tail that they had, a big, big long tail. So mainly big ears to the head, but other than the toes and things like that, I think it's a pretty good Iguanodon. And obviously, since there's fit on the rig, things like that, it's not going to be one-to-one. You could say the eyes are a little bit big or this and that, but really, really cool to see a nice Iguanodon. If you want to see good Edmontosaurus and good Iguanodon and a good Parasaurolophus and all that, just go play Prehistoric Kingdom. They've got it pretty much spot on. So that's really, really awesome. So let's watch these Iguanodons and walk off. Just make sure, don't hang around here, because I want to show off some of the other wonderful animals we've got. So next we've got Maiasaurus, so the good mother lizard. So really cool addition, and we'll talk a little about her as well. So let's get ourselves one in the light. There's one there in the light we could probably have a look at, but we'll have a look at you because you look nice, I think. Look at this wonderful one here. I love the colors on these guys. There's Maiasaura, really beautiful. I think this kind of went from one of the ugly looking ones to one of the really nice ones with these edits. So Maiasaura, we know the good mother lizard, very famous for being one of the first dinosaurs known with eggs and all that. Uh, really, really interesting. And you can see some of the major changes, especially because the one in the original game kind of had this really big brow ridge across its head, which was actually based on younger specimens. Adult didn't really have that, but they did have these kind of little horn things, little hornlets, you could say, that have kind of showed off in the specimen. You can kind of see there. Let's see if we can have a look at this one. You can kind of see the small little horns there. So really, really wonderful. Obviously, really nice neck, and you can see the head is so much different. They have these very, very long beaks. They get the name duckbills, but it's not really accurate. The reason they kind of get that name is because people often underestimate the amount of keratin, and we know from animals such as Edmontosaurus that these guys had pretty extensive beaks covering the bone under it, so it would have been a lot of keratin that really made it look like a big beak, and it's perfect for chowing through vegetation and things like that. Really, really awesome. We'll talk about the feet, as I mentioned, similar to Edmontosaurus. It would have had the hoof situation going on rather than the kind of three-toed thing going on. You can see some of the changes in the body as well. These guys had relatively long and stiff tails. They even had a lot of ossified tendons, which are tendons which have turned into bone that are able to support kind of the back there. So it would have been quite stiff or much more stable than probably in a lot of relatives. Really, really awesome. And because this one comes right back here. So really it's just a lot of these minor edits, like edits to the legs and stuff, because they had quite legs that were kind of almost like antelope, really long and dainty, but still quite powerful. Not like the columnar legs of like sauropods or elephants. But yeah, it still looks really, really nice. I'm also just a big fan of this color. This just came out so nice. Same with this guy as well. I'm really big fan of how these guys came out. Really, really wonderful. So that's our Maiasaura that we've done talked about. So yeah, obviously as all these mods were done by Feilong and kind of all the stuff that he's been doing to really change up and make them look more accurate to the real animals. Big fan of how this has been going on. So we've done with our first five. Now we've got the next five. So now we're going to go a little bit back to the Iguanodontians. We have got our Aussie favourite. We have got Muttaburrasaurus. Let's see if we can get one standing so we can have a look. We'll have a look at this one since he's standing quite nice in the sun there. So this is our Muttaburrasaurus. Really, really wonderful guy here. So in the first game, obviously they were quadrupedal, but most evidence suggests that they were bipedal now, and they really can't change that in the second game. So I'm obviously a big fan of that. It was actually pretty spot on for the most part in terms of its anatomy, but we can see some of the changes here that have made it to look more like its fossil counterpart. We can see the head's probably still a little too big. Muttaburrasaurus almost had like a kind of small head, but you can see it's got this really, really big nasal cavity where in like Walking with Dinosaurs it was used as kind of almost like to resonate, which is still a likely hypothesis. But potentially could have just been to increase airflow, all sorts of different things, maybe for visual display. So I think some of that's really cool. Also, we got this really interesting beak that it's got here. As I mentioned, the head's a little big, but that's all right. Still got thickened up neck a bit, but it would have had kind of a longer neck. But I like that they went a little bit thicker this one. We can also see, as I mentioned, bipedal with this big round body it's got going on, and also this long tail. It almost looks like a weird theropod, but I think it came out really, really well. Same issue as I mentioned with Iguanodon. You could see that they've obviously got the 5 fingers there with the nails. It wouldn't have been like that in life. It would have been the kind of thumb and then the um, these guys would, because these guys are really early iguanodontians, so kind of like from that early group. So they would have had a little bit more fingers exposed, but they kind of would have had the 3 there, and they would have had kind of the little ones, little hands there, but they weren't kind of. They were quite early, so they weren't quite on their way to iguanodon, but it's kind of the more basal condition or the condition from where it came from. So this is kind of what you'd expect for early ornithopods and iguanodontians. So really, really nice there. Big fan. And you can kind of see it here, like that profile. And obviously, as I mentioned, you can't really change the rigs too much without doing a little bit of a disservice. But you can see that long tail and the changes to the stomach with that big gut for digesting plant matter, and kind of really rounds it out that shape. Really makes it look nice and realistic. Big fan of the Muttaburrasaurus. So let them walk out of here so we can go and have a look at our next animals. So we're going back to about some of the later animals. We have got a Titan, so that's a really fun one. Good old Laura Titan. So here's our big guy himself. So let's see if we can get one in the sun. I think we'll just stick with this guy here, or maybe this one. So really beautiful colors that these guys have got. So yeah, really huge. These guys were quite big, about 10 meters or so, I believe. Really big. Or maybe 8 meters, or it's that kind of size range. I mean, but yeah, kind of awkward on the rig because these guys were most likely quadrupeds since these guys were so large. But you can see the main changes is to the skull. It had like a really long snout with this really interesting crest. It's almost like a fin on like a keel or something on a boat, or even a sail. I think that might be the better comparison. It just looks really interesting. Though I think in life the bottom of it may have been covered in flesh with the nugal ligament coming from the top of the head. Like the more similar to the Corythosaurus at the start, they would have had big muscular ligaments and muscles on the neck that made it look almost like cow-like in terms of its thick neck. But I think it came out really nice here, and they've got a very boxy body. I think the standing up posture maybe just doesn't do it too much justice. I think this one's a little better. But it almost looks like it's got a drooping belly, but I think that's just kind of the animation it's got. But yeah, same things that I mentioned with the Edmontosaurus. These guys would have had kind of the 2 hooves and the little finger there, as you can see. So all of that would have been with 2 hooves and kind of a big fleshy hoof. The body looks pretty good. Also got this little like ischium there coming out like there in the pubis and all that. And then we've got same condition with Maiasaura. We've got ossified tendons on the back here, so that would have helped keep the back more stable, or just keep everything more stabilized. And it's kind of thick but shorter tail they've got going on. So yeah, really cool Laura Titan. Big fan of that. And I also really enjoy the skins. I love this one here. I really like how it kind of brings out that crest more. So I'm a big fan of that. And also just looking at them because they're so big, very big animals. So really huge. So like 8, 9, even 10 meters. It's really hard to calculate the size of dinosaurs sometimes. You can only say some specimens were typically that big. But yeah, really awesome. So let's let these guys walk out, do their thing. So moved on from Laura Titan. Now we've got the other O. We've got Ouranosaurus coming up. We don't want to pause it. We just want to make sure these guys don't walk into. So we got the wonderful Ouranosaurus. Let's see if we can pause it. We'll have a look at this one here because this one's got the nicer pattern. Oh no, he's going to the bush. Let's just and then walk through the bush then. There we are. So I want to show off his feet the same way as the other ones. So this is our wonderful Ouranosaurus. So we can see some of the major changes here. It's almost like a big round circle. But we see a lot of the changes to the head. It looks more like a platypus in the base game, but you can see it's got this quite long face here with the keratin kind of coming up around the beak there. Really, really long face. It kind of makes sense for the kind of habitat it was living in. Also, it's really nice neck. It's about the set right length. But one issue is that because it was rigged on the Iguanodon, so it kind of has this big forelimbs here. But it seems like similar. Its condition was more similar to the Muttaburrasaurus, where it kind of had. Let's go have a look at the Muttaburrasaurus. There's one over here with kind of these skinny forelimbs here. So these guys, even though they're iguanodontians, they were more basal, so that means they potentially could have had these more skinny limbs. And there is debate whether these guys were quadrupedal or bipedal. Obviously, as we can see here, they went with the quadrupedal hypothesis. But it's very likely, or even just as likely, that the Ouranosaurus would have been bipedal, similar as the Titan here, though that's most likely was quadrupedal, and the Muttaburrasaurus. So that might be the better condition, since these guys were more closely related to each other than kind of all the other guys. But yeah, really, really wonderful. This also, the three fingers here would have been obviously in skin, with the pinky and the little thumb spike there. Really, really big sail that gives it that characteristic shape of the Ouranosaurus. Seems like there's more recent evidence suggesting that it was quite rounded, so I think this kind of fits that rather well. With this really tall tail, because the big neural spines kind of went all the way back here. And then you can see the big point of the ischium and the boot, things like that. Big body, yeah, big fan. This guy came out well, especially like the skull. If only you could put them on something quadrupedal, bipedal like the Muttaburrasaurus, but yeah, it really came out well. Big fan. So that's our Ouranosaurus done. Next, we've got everyone's kind of big favorite prehistoric. We'll just wait for these guys to go. Everyone's big favorite prehistoric and we've got Parasaurolophus. So we'll have a look at some of these guys walking around. We'll pick this brown one over here. I'm a big fan of him. So we can see this wonderful guy here. So as I mentioned before, these guys have got the really thick neck, as evidenced by fossil evidence, especially with the redescription of the holotype of Parasaurolophus. Shows that these guys had big ligaments and big muscles on their neck, very similar to a cow, that allowed them to graze a lot better. And you can see this is most likely based off Walkeri, since Walkeri is kind of quite famous for having that really long crest there. There's other species like Cryptocarsus, which is kind of a shorter one that's more curved, but that's kind of the holotype species is Walkeri. So really, really awesome there with that big, thick neck. Similar to a Titan, these guys would have been more likely quadrupedal, so they'd walk around on 4 feet. And similar to these guys that have the kind of 2 nails, and obviously I've mentioned that in all of them so far, so I don't need to sound like a broken record, I don't think. But we can see these guys have quite a stocky body, along with the pelvis coming back around here. These guys didn't have that long of a tail, but I think this is kind of well represented here, and also this big body, especially around like the sacral. They kind of almost had a big peak at the back there, but that obviously could be because of just a specimen. But I think this guy looks really, really nice. You can see that crest and skull is really accentuated quite well. I really like the amount of keratin that he put on the beak, because people really underestimate the keratin. It seems like we do that, especially since we don't have too much in terms of facial tissue for Parasaurolophus, but knowing from Edmontosaurus and other animals, there would have been a lot of keratin on that beak, and even there was even talk of having keratin around that, and having almost like, there was a meme a while back, it was almost like a big round keratin sheath around the crest of Parasaurolophus that almost made it look like a big round balloon. But I think a lot of people are much more conservative with that now, and I think it looks conservatively looks much better. But yeah, big fan of how this one came out. And you can see just that big neck there. If only they were on the rig, similar to the one that I did last time, the one by Mega Gaming Rex. That one was basically the perfect, accurate Parasaurolophus. So yeah, big fan of that. So we're moving on to the next one. Just want to make sure that they don't move in front of the guys here. So let's have a look at our last guys. We've got Edmontosaurus. So really, really awesome animal. Okay. Not helpful that you stood in the way. But here we have our Centaurosaurus. Really, really wonderful. So let's get these guys paused. I'll have a look at you now, just while we get a chance. We'll have a look at this one, but we can see how wonderful these guys are. Similar to, as I mentioned, Ouranotitan and Parasaurolophus. These guys would most likely be quadrupedal, but we can see some of the wonderful changes here. When this guy was first described, we were missing a lot of its crest, so it was thought to have a rather phallic-shaped crest. But once we found more specimens and stuff, it showed that these guys had this really distinctive, almost like a lollipop crest that I think looks really, really nice on these guys. But yeah, I'm a big fan of how this guy came out. You can see the kind of long face that it's got there, with that thick neck, similar to, as I mentioned, Parasaurolophus and Corythosaurus and animals like that. And kind of the same issues that I mentioned for the other Parasaurolophines. We've got the feet here. Obviously, there would have been only 2 nails and kind of all connected in flesh, one big fleshy hoof. Body would have been quite more similar to something like Parasaurolophus, so this is kind of probably a bit tight, but yeah, looks really nice. Kind of a longer tail. Yeah, this kind of one's probably, because we went in alphabetical order, kind of a little bit of a less fun one to end off, but yeah, really, really nice. It's kind of one of those underrated dinosaurs, so it's really cool that it got some love, and I really like that Feilong has kind of went in and really made these animals look more like their fossil counterparts, so people can appreciate how these animals were for how they were, not just how we imagine or how we want them to be. They're not monsters, they're animals, all that. So yeah, big fan of how this Edmontosaurus came out. Really, really love him. I'm really a big fan of all our little ornithopods and hadrosaurs and iguanodontians here. I think they all came out rather wonderfully. So Feilong did a wonderful job, and we've got plenty of mods by Feilong to cover in the future. So if you want more from Feilong, obviously there's going to be much, much more, and then we're going to have much more paleo edits and much more new species when they come out, and more replacements. I've got another 5 more parts at least for Jurassic World Evolution 2, so you guys won't be missing out for too long if you guys obviously a really big fan of the modding. I know Jurassic World Evolution 2 hasn't been performing as well in terms of money and even modding than the first game, but I'm still going to cover them because I just want to show off some of these wonderful mods and talk about these guys to everyone. So yeah, with that little PSA, I think this is good way to time to end the video. So I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified about anything. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.